She wrote the date I would die, and I found it months before it happened. Every line read like a memory I hadn't lived yet. And the closer I got to the last page, the more I realized she wasn't warning me, she was remembering me. She said I'd never finish the coffee that morning, and she was right. The mug still sits by the window, a ring of dust beneath it, like a clock that stopped halfway through time. The house hasn't made a sound since she left, only the sigh of the curtains breathing against the glass. I used to love that quiet. Now it feels rehearsed, like the world has forgotten its next line. The morning light barely reaches the floor. It drifts through the fog outside and paints the furniture with the color of fading photographs. I tell myself I'll clean today. Throw away the things that still whisper her name. The hairbrush by the sink. The half-burned candle. She never finished the scarf, still hanging on the chair. But my body doesn't move. It waits like it knows something I don't. That's when I see it, her journal. Lying half open on the table, spine cracked, as if it had been waiting. I tell myself not to touch it. It's been months since she left. I have no right. But memory has its own gravity. My hand moves anyway. The cover is soft, worn at the corners where she used to rest her thumb. I can almost hear the faint sound of her pen, the small rhythm she made when she thought no one was listening. Emma used to write every morning. Dreams, recipes, fragments of prayers, anything to keep her mind quiet. She said the pages didn't judge her like people did. I'd find her sitting by this same window, hair pulled back, writing like she was trying to catch time before it ran away. Sometimes she'd smile at something she wrote. Other times she'd close the book quickly, as if hiding a thought that scared her. I flip it open. The first page greets me with the neat, careful handwriting I know too well, and a date circled in blue ink, June 17th. 3 months from now. Beneath it, 3 words: he won't wake up. I pause. The coffee cools beside me untouched. Maybe it's another one of her dream entries, I think. She used to write them down and laugh at how absurd they were. But the lines beneath stop my breath. He sits by the window. He doesn't answer. He's gone. But the coffee's still warm. Every word describes exactly where I am. The mug, the light, even the angle of my chair. I glance around, half expecting a camera, half expecting her. But the house is still. The ink has faded. Slightly, the way time eats color. The entry is dated March 2nd. She wrote this 3 months ago. I rub my thumb across the words, as if touch could rewrite meaning. The paper smells faintly of lavender, her perfume. The air thickens heavy, with something I can't name. I turn another page, blank. Another, blank. Then halfway through a line, written in the same faded ink. He's starting to read this. My heart doesn't race. It slows, deliberate, steady, like it's bracing for something it's known all along. I lift my head and stare at the hallway. The shadows look longer than they should. I wait for sound, a floorboard, a whisper her voice. Nothing comes. Only the house, breathing uneven, as if imitating me. I want to call her, to ask if this is some cruel kind of poetry, her last way of controlling a man she no longer loves. But she hasn't answered my calls in weeks. The papers for our divorce are still on my desk unsigned. Maybe this is her goodbye, a riddle she knew I couldn't resist solving. I close the book, but my fingers won't let go. The silence presses harder, filling the room like water. I walk to the sink, turn on the tap, and let it run until steam fogs the glass. When I glance at the window, my reflection wavers, half there, half gone. I wipe the fog away and whisper her name just once. The air doesn't move. The clock on the wall has stopped. I turn back toward the table, and my stomach tightens. The journal isn't where I left it. It's closer to the edge, slightly open again, one corner lifted by the breath of the room. I step closer, every footstep loud, loud in the stillness. I don't remember opening it, but the next thing I know, I'm reading again. He will try to deny it. He will think he's alive. The words blur for a moment, as if my eyes are adjusting to something deeper than light. I close the book and rest my hand over it, feeling the faint pulse of warmth beneath the cover, not heat, but heartbeat, mine, or maybe hers. The lamp beside the window flickers once, then steadies. The reflection in the glass shows me sitting perfectly still, head bowed, a man praying to something he doesn't believe in. But in the reflection, my lips are moving and I haven't said a word. That night, I left every light in the house on, not because I was afraid of the dark, but because I was afraid of what it might reveal. Light feels honest, at least until you realize it only shows what it's allowed to touch. The shadows always keep more. I couldn't sleep. The bed was too big, too still, smelling faintly of the cologne she used to buy for me. The one she said made me smell like a man who still believed in mornings. I lay there, counting the sounds I could trust, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock, the wind against the gutter. They were steady, ordinary, real. But somewhere between the ticks, there was a silence that didn't belong, a kind of waiting. At 2:17 a.m., I found myself in the kitchen again. I don't remember standing up, don't remember walking there. The journal was waiting on the table open, as if I'd left it that way. But the page was new. Different handwriting. Hers again. It began with another date, June 16th, the day before the one that said I wouldn't wake up. The lines were rushed, ink smudged in places. He keeps hearing me in the house. But it's not me. It's what he left behind. I felt a drop of sweat roll down my neck, cold, even in the warm air. I turned the page. He's walking in circles. He doesn't remember what he's lost. He doesn't know he already left. I laughed quietly, a dry, hollow sound. "Nice try, Emma," I whispered. "You always knew how to twist a sentence." But the laugh didn't sound like mine. It came from somewhere near, somewhere behind. I spun around. Nothing. Just the kitchen light, pale and merciless, showing everything it could. I walked to the hallway mirror and caught my reflection staring back. My face looked pale, stretched thin by the weight of sleeplessness. My eyes, though, they didn't blink when I did. I leaned closer. The reflection caught up a fraction of a second too late. "Stop it," I said aloud. My voice trembled, but the sound grounded me. I needed that. I needed to stay real. I pressed my fingers against the glass. It was cold, like touching the surface of a lake. When I pulled my hand back, there was a faint outline. Not fog, but color. Blue. Blue. Back in the kitchen, I noticed the photo on the wall, the last picture we took together. Emma's smile was soft, but her eyes were somewhere else. I was standing beside her, hand on her shoulder. But in the reflection behind us, the mirror showed only her. My space was filled with nothing but light. I blinked hard, stepped closer, but the image stayed the same. I told myself it was exposure, a camera glitch. Lies are easiest when they sound technical. The journal waited patiently on the table. When I sat down, it seemed warmer than before. I turned to the next page. He'll start noticing the small things she'd written. The sound of his breath not matching his heartbeat. The way his shadow doesn't follow him anymore. I looked down. My shadow stretched across the floor, but something about it was off. Not the shape, but the rhythm. When I moved my hand, the shadow hesitated, just long enough to remind me that control was an illusion. The wind outside rose suddenly, a low hum vibrating through the glass. I went to the window, gripping the edge of the frame. The street was empty. No cars, no people, no wind moving the trees. Yet the hum stayed like a sound, trapped between worlds. Behind me, a faint clatter, the mug by the sink tipping over on its own. I turned just in time. to see a line of steam rising from it. Fresh coffee. The smell was unmistakable, her roast. The one she'd ground every morning while humming softly under her breath. I approached it slowly, terrified of the comfort it offered. The mug was warm when I touched it, and on the rim, written in faint blue pen, were words I couldn't deny. June 17th. He's almost home. I stepped back so fast, the chair behind me fell. My breath came out ragged, shallow. I wanted to scream, to curse her name, but no sound found its way out. My throat felt full of something heavier than voice memory, maybe. I glanced down at my hands. They were trembling, stained faintly with blue. I turned off all the lights, except one, the small lamp by the window. It cast a single pool of gold across the table. The journal sat inside it like a creature basking in light. I could almost swear it pulsed. I reached for it again, drawn like a moth. He won't listen, it read. He never did. The page trembled slightly in the air from my breath. I closed the book and whispered, "Then tell me, Emma. Tell me what I'm not hearing." But the house said nothing. Only the faint hum remained soft and constant like a heartbeat under the floor. And then faintly from somewhere deep within the walls, I heard her voice, muffled, distant, saying my name. Once, then silence. The sound of her voice didn't fade like an echo. It stayed. Somewhere in the walls, in the quiet hum of the house, I could still hear its soft trembling, almost kind. "John," she whispered the way she used to when she wanted to wake me without breaking the dream. My heart reacted before my mind did. I called her name out loud, once, twice. But my voice didn't travel. It just fell into the room and disappeared like shouting into snow. I turned every light back on. The house came alive in a false brightness kitchen. Hallway, bedroom, each room pretending to be safe. I walked through them, touching the walls, trying to feel where her voice had come from. The air was warm against my palm, yet somewhere beneath it was a chill, like the memory of winter. In our bedroom, her perfume still lingered, faint but familiar. It made my chest ache. I opened the closet. Her clothes hung neatly untouched. None of them should have been there. She'd taken everything when she left. I touched one of her dresses, blue cotton, with a torn sleeve, and felt a shiver crawl through me. It was cold, damp, like it had been outside in the rain. I dropped it instantly. On the vanity, her hairbrush was lying beside a single envelope. No stamp, just my name in her handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a page torn from the journal. Same blue ink. He's starting to remember the ending. I folded it carefully, though my hands shook. My pulse pounded so hard it made the paper flutter. Downstairs, the journal sat exactly where I'd left it. Or maybe it had never moved at all. I opened it again, unable to resist. The words had changed. Not all of them, just one line between the paragraphs wedged where it hadn't been before. He keeps denying the sound behind him. He doesn't realize it's his own voice. I froze. The room tilted slightly as though gravity had grown tired of me. I turned my head, slowly, toward the reflection in the window. The faint outline of a man stood behind me, not shadow, not light, something in between. I spun around, but there was only empty space. My breath came out shallow, uneven. I sat down, pressed both palms against the table, and closed my eyes. It's stress, I told myself. Grief can mimic ghosts. But then I heard it again, my own voice, low and quiet, repeating the same line I'd just read. He doesn't realize it's his own voice. I opened my eyes. The room was empty. The echo wasn't. I stood and looked at the hallway mirror once more. This time I studied it carefully. The lines of my face, the exhaustion in my eyes, the way the light bent across the glass. Everything looked right until I smiled. The reflection didn't. It stayed still, mouth closed, eyes patient. My skin prickled. I stepped closer, so close my breath fogged the glass. But the reflection didn't fog with me. My hand lifted on instinct, fingers trembling as I touched the surface. It was warm. The mirror rippled faintly, as if something underneath had exhaled. I staggered back, knocking over a lamp. The bulb shattered, plunging half the hallway into shadow. The reflection remained lit, even in the dark. I could see myself standing there in light that no longer existed. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to breathe, but each inhale felt wrong, as if my lungs weren't sure whether to obey. I forced myself back into the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter to steady my thoughts. The clock read 11:43 p.m. Time moved, at least. That should have been enough proof that I was still here, still living. The journal waited for me. I turned another page slowly this time, like peeling back skin. He'll read this line, thinking it's written by her. It isn't. I stared at the words until they blurred, until the ink seemed to breathe. I whispered, "Then who?" The next line answered, "You." I stumbled back, chair legs scraping the floor, the word echoing in my head, not spoken, not heard, but felt like a pulse beneath the skin. I wanted to burn it, to destroy it, but my hands wouldn't obey. Instead, I flipped through the pages, faster and faster, desperate to find where it ended. Each line spoke directly to me now. He's getting closer. He's beginning to see what she saw. He doesn't understand that she was never warning him. She was remembering him. The journal fell from my hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. The pages fanned open like wings, and the lamplight flickered again. In the reflection on the window, I wasn't sitting anymore. I was standing behind myself, watching. I blinked, and both versions of me moved, one slightly slower than the other. I don't remember standing up. The reflection had moved before I did, and for a moment, I thought maybe I had imagined it. But then it blinked half a beat too slow. I stepped closer, and it stepped closer too, mirroring me just slightly wrong. My hand lifted toward the glass, and his hand, my hand lagged again, deliberate this time, as if testing how much of me it could imitate. I whispered Emma, but the lips in the reflection didn't move. They smiled instead, small, distant like hers. I stumbled backward, knocking the chair into the table. The journal slid to the floor, pages fluttering, stopping on one that hadn't existed before. He's seeing it now. The ink was wet, still glistening under the light. I crouched down, staring, too afraid to touch it. The air smelled faintly of smoke and rain. I felt something drip on my hand, cold, thin, like melted ice. I looked up. The ceiling was dry. Then another drop. I wiped it with my thumb. Blue. It smeared across my skin, staining the creases of my palm. I heard a sound from the hallway. A soft thud, followed by the faint drag of something across wood. Emma. My voice broke the stillness. The sound stopped. Every instinct told me to leave, to step outside, breathe real air. But something about the house made me feel that the world beyond these walls had stopped waiting for me. I walked slowly toward the hallway, barefoot, feeling every vibration in the floorboards. The light flickered as I passed the mirror again. My reflection stood a little farther back this time, as if it were giving me space to make my mistake. Halfway down the hall, I heard the whisper, again closer, now right behind my ear. You were never supposed to find it. I turned sharply, heart clawing at my chest. The hallway was empty, but a door at the end. Our bedroom door was half open, moving slightly, with a breeze that shouldn't exist. I pushed it open. The room was dim lit only by the lamp on her side of the bed. On the nightstand lay another journal. Not the same one. This one was older, leather-worn, edges cracked. I hadn't seen it before. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside her handwriting flowed softer, calmer. He's fading. Not gone yet, but fading. Page after page, the entries spoke like someone documenting a slow disappearance. He doesn't know. He's already gone. His body moves, his voice remains, but his shadow has learned the truth. I felt the air around me shift denser, heavier, like the room itself was exhaling. The faint smell of her perfume filled the air again, closer this time, as if she had just walked through the doorway. I whispered, "If you can hear me, tell me what I'm supposed to do." The lamp flickered once, twice. "Then stop it." I turned another page. The ink was darker here, as though pressed harder, almost angry. He'll ask for her voice. He'll want her forgiveness. But he doesn't understand he was the one who wrote this. The room spun. I dropped the book, stepping back as the truth slid under my skin like a blade. I looked at the desk in the corner, the same desk where I used to write letters I never sent. There among the dust sat an old pen. Blue ink. I picked it up. The nib was stained, the color still fresh. I tried to remember the last time I had written anything. I couldn't. I could only remember her saying, "You always try to fix pain by narrating it." Maybe that's what this was, a story I wrote and forgot a way to rewrite guilt until it sounded like prophecy. But then the pen moved on its own. It rolled across the desk, leaving a single word behind in wet ink: stay. I froze. My throat went dry. I whispered, "Emma, please." The reflection in the window behind the desk showed her standing beside me now, clear, calm, her hand almost touching my shoulder. Her lip moved, forming words I couldn't hear. I turned around. The room was empty. I walked to the mirror again, desperate for proof. My reflection stared back, pale, trembling. But the space beside it wasn't empty. She stood there, faint and golden, her face soft, her eyes filled with something like mercy or regret. She mouthed something again. I pressed my hand to the glass, trying to read her lips. It's already June 17th. The clock on the wall ticked once, and I heard the faint drip of ink on wood. I looked down, blue circles spreading across the floor, blooming like small bruises. When I looked up again, she was gone. Morning came without light. The sky outside the window looked like paper, soaked in ash, heavy and colorless. I'd spent the night in the chair by her desk, waiting for something, sound, movement, reason. Nothing came. The journal sat closed in front of me, but its presence felt awake, aware. The word she'd written, "Stay still," glistened faintly on the wood where the ink had spilled. I told myself I'd leave the house today. I said it aloud as if speaking could make it true. But when I stood, my body felt foreign, my balance wrong, as though gravity had been rearranged while I slept. The air had that stillness, right before rain, expectant, electric. I walked into the living room. The mirror above the fireplace reflected a scene that didn't exist. Emma sitting on the couch, hair loose, reading the same journal that lay in my hand. She looked peaceful. I blinked. The couch was empty. The reflection wasn't. I took one step closer, whispering, "Emma, if this is you, tell me what I did." Her reflection raised its head. For a second, her eyes met mine, through the glass. Then she looked down, writing something in the book on her lap. A heartbeat later, letters began appearing across an open page in my real journal. He's finally asking the right question. I dropped it onto the table. What question? I shouted. The reflection didn't answer. It only smiled the way she used to when she forgave me for something small but stupid. The memory stabbed deeper than fear ever could. I sank to the floor, back against the wall, breathing hard. My mind kept circling the same truth I didn't want to touch. She knew this would happen. Every line she wrote, every prediction. It wasn't fortune-telling. It was memory. She was writing what she had already lived. And if she'd lived my death, then maybe she'd already buried me. I tried to recall the last fight we had before she left. It was raining. I'd been drunk. She said I was vanishing, even while standing right in front of her. I told her people, don't vanish. They just get quieter. She cried, said silence can kill faster than words. Then she walked out. That was months ago, or maybe days. The timeline kept folding in on itself, like the pages of a book that couldn't stay open. The hum returned, low, steady, coming from under the floorboards. I followed it into the hallway. Dust motes floated in the thin shaft of light from the door's keyhole. The front door handle gleamed faintly, but when I reached for it, my fingers passed straight through. The air was cold where metal should have been. I tried again, harder, gripping the shape of it, and felt nothing. My knees weakened. I staggered back into the table, grabbed the journal, desperate for proof of something solid. The new entry had already formed. He's almost home. He just doesn't know where home is. I tore the page out and crumpled it, but the ink bled through my skin, seeping into my palm like veins of truth. I shouted her name again. The echo returned, but softer, like someone calling from underwater. I turned in circles, searching for her voice, for my breath, for anything that tethered me to this moment. That's when I saw the photo on the wall, the one that had always bothered me. Emma and I, smiling, sunlight behind us. But this time, there was someone else in the background, a figure by the window. I stepped closer. It was me watching us, expression blank, hands stained blue. I pressed a trembling hand to the glass covering the photo. How many times have I done this? I whispered. How many times have I already read these? Why? The clock chimed once, faint, broken, as if it were remembering rather than marking time. I looked down at the journal again. The next line shimmered. He's ready to see the last page. My hands shook as I flipped to the end. Blank paper stared back at me. I waited. Then slowly letters began forming as though written from beneath the page. He died on June 17th. 7:42 a.m. The coffee was still warm. I checked the time. 7:39. My mouth went dry. I felt the world, narrowing edges bending inward. I whispered, "Emma, if you can hear me, I'm sorry." The pen on the desk lifted slightly, rolled toward the book, and stopped. The air thickened with her scent, lavender and smoke. The final line appeared beneath the others. "He understands now, and that's enough." The clock ticked once more. 7:42. The mug by the window trembled, steam rising softly, as if exhaling a final breath. I reached for it, but my hand passed through the handle like mist. The coffee stayed warm. The moment stretched longer than a breath, longer than thought. The mug by the window stilled again, steam thinning into the air like a memory surrendering itself. I sat there watching it fade, my pulse barely present. Somewhere between the ticking of the clock and the creak of the wood beneath me, something shifted. Not in the room, in me. I whispered my name just to hear it. John. The sound was thin, unconvincing, like it belonged to someone else. I said it again, louder, and for the first time I noticed the strangest thing. My breath didn't fog the window. The air moved, but I didn't. I turned back to the journal. The ink on the last page was still wet. Beneath the words that recorded my death, a new sentence was appearing. Letter, by trembling letter, he's beginning to remember. My throat tightened. Remember what I asked, but the house didn't answer. The pen beside the book rolled gently, stopping near my hand. I lifted it, half expecting the weight to prove something, but it was lighter than air, as if hollowed out by the truth. I opened the drawer where Emma's old things still hid. A half-empty perfume bottle, her reading glasses, a letter she never sent. Beneath them was a small voice recorder. I didn't recall ever owning it. My fingers brushed the play button. The device crackled to life. Emma's voice. Soft, deliberate. If you're hearing this, it means you found the journal. I hoped you wouldn't. I froze. My breath caught halfway in my chest. You used to say truth was a kind of forgiveness, she continued. But you never forgave yourself, did you? You just buried the noise until it sounded like silence. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk to stay upright. Her tone wasn't angry, just unbearably gentle, like someone reading an obituary aloud. I kept writing because I couldn't let you disappear, she said. You were already gone when I found you that morning. The coffee was warm. You'd written your apology on the table, but the ink hadn't dried. I looked at the desk. The faint blue stains. The word, stay. Emma's voice trembled now. I tried to write you back. Maybe I did. Maybe you're reading it now. The recorder clicked off. Silence flooded back, immense and soft. I stared at the journal, realizing what she meant. She hadn't predicted my death. She had answered it. Every line I'd been reading, every message written in her hand, had been born after I was gone. I was the ghost in her story. The realization didn't frighten me. It unstitched me. All the noises of the house, the humming refrigerator, the distant wind fell into a kind of rhythm I'd never heard before, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I walked to the window, expecting to see morning outside, but the street looked frozen mid-breath. A bird hung suspended in the air. Light no longer moved. I turned back to the room. The mirror reflected both of us now. Emma standing behind me, her hand on my shoulder. She looked exactly as I remembered, except calmer, lighter. Her lips moved, and though no sound came, I understood the words. "It's time." My knees weakened. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "for everything. For the silence." She smiled faintly. Not forgiveness, not sorrow, just peace. The reflection rippled and her hand slipped through my shoulder, dissolving into light. I looked down at the journal. One final line was etching itself slowly across the page. "He doesn't have to stay anymore." I reached for the mug by the window, not to drink, just to touch. The surface was cool now. The steam was gone. The clock behind me had stopped again at 7:42. For a long time I just stood there, watching the dust in the air drift like falling snow. It was strange how stillness could feel like mercy. The fear had left me completely. I realized that dying wasn't the moment I had been avoiding. It was remembering that I already had. I closed the journal and placed it where she had left it on the table beside the chair. The ink shimmered once under the dim light, then settled into silence. Outside, a single bird resumed its flight. The sky brightened by a shade soft gold, washing the edge of the window. I smiled at the reflection, at her, at me, at the story we had both finished writing. Then, with a breath that didn't quite belong to me, I whispered, "Thank you." And the house, for the first time in months, finally exhaled. I used to think death was a door you stepped through, a single threshold. 1 second you're on this side, breathing, thinking, regretting, and the next silence swallows it all. But it isn't like that. It's slower. It lingers. It lets you watch the echoes of what you left behind until you finally understand why they mattered. The morning after my last heartbeat feels endless. There's no hunger, no sleep, no false, just presence. The house exists in a kind of gentle half-light, like a painting that hasn't decided whether it's finished. I move through it the way wind moves through curtains, seen but barely. Emma's things remain where she left them. The scarf draped over the chair, the book on the couch, The small indentation on her pillow. Everything breathes her, but she is gone. Or maybe I'm the one who's left the place where gone still means something. I sit by the window, again where the mug used to wait for me. The surface of the coffee is flat now, a mirror of dust and memory. My reflection in it is faint, fading at the edges. I should feel fear, but I don't. What I feel is the slow unraveling of noise, like a storm, finally exhausting itself. Across the room, the journal lies open to the last page. The words no longer shift. They stay still quiet. Finished. I trace the edges of the cover with my finger, though I can't feel texture anymore, only the suggestion of it. She wrote those pages, trying to speak with me across an impossible distance, and somehow she did. I remember her sitting by this window, years ago, writing while I read the paper. I never asked what she wrote about. I told myself I was giving her privacy, but the truth was simpler. I was afraid to know how she saw me. I think she saw the truth long before I did. She saw a man slowly turning into an echo. A faint movement catches my attention. The door to the garden has opened slightly. Sunlight bleeds, in pale forgiving. The first true light I've seen since that morning. I rise through. I don't feel weight anymore. My feet make no sound on the floor. The air outside hums softly, alive in a way I'd forgotten. The trees bend gently, though there's no wind. Each leaf glows with quiet gold. I take one step past the threshold, half expecting resistance, some invisible boundary to stop me. There is none. Only the warmth of light and a strange familiarity. For a moment, I see her Emma standing at the far end of the path where the light gathers. She's wearing the same blue dress from that photo, her hair caught by a breeze that doesn't exist. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The look in her eyes says what her voice never had to. It's okay. I start walking toward her, but each step seems to slow time itself. The world folds softly inward, every sound muffled, every color dimming except for the light around her. I realize I'm not supposed to reach her, not yet. She begins to fade, smiling as she does, leaving behind only her warmth. Behind me, the house begins to dissolve into haze. The walls blur. The furniture thins into shadow. I hear one last echo of my own voice, faint but calm. He understands now. For a second, everything stops, the way the heart stops between beats. I turn back toward the table, toward the journal, lying open in the sunlight. A pen rests across its center. The ink glows faintly, One last message, etching itself onto the page. He stayed long enough to see love, not death. I smile, because that sounds like her. Always turning pain into clarity. Always teaching me even after the lesson was over. I sit by the window one last time. Outside, the bird that had been frozen mid-flight finally lands on the fence feathers, shaking free of stillness. I close my eyes and let the silence wrap around me, not heavy this time, but weightless. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her that the words she wrote did save me, not from dying, but from forgetting how to feel. I'd tell her the journal wasn't a prophecy. It was forgiveness written backward. The light grows brighter. I feel it moving through me, not as warmth, but as memory clearing every shadow that once called itself guilt. Somewhere maybe far away, I think I hear her laugh, the same quiet laugh she gave me the day we met when she said, "You look like someone who mistakes silence for peace." Now I understand what she meant, and for the first time I truly am. The air around me feels thinner, now like the house is breathing slower, preparing to rest. I'm not sure how long I've been sitting by the window, hours, days, or something quieter than time. The journal lies open on the table again, though I don't remember touching it. The pages shift on their own, slow and deliberate, as if the wind were reading for me. There's something new at the back. A page that wasn't there before. I lean closer. The handwriting isn't hers or mine. It's both layered over each other, blue on black, like two voices sharing the same breath. He will remember what really happened. A pulse of cold moves through the room. The smell of rain, sharp and electric, fills the air. I hear the faint hiss of the voice recorder on the desk. It clicks on by itself, the small red light glowing. Then her voice again, steady this time, softer than before. "You told me the night before that you couldn't sleep. You said the silence was getting too loud. I should have stayed awake with you, but I didn't. I thought you just needed space." I close my eyes, the memory forming like a film reel behind them. The night before I died, the last argument, the broken cup, her hand reaching for me while I turned away. When I came down that morning, her voice continues. "You were sitting by the window, coffee untouched, the sun just starting to rise. You looked peaceful. I called your name twice. You didn't answer. My hands tremble. I see it now. Her footsteps behind me, the faint sound of her breath catching when she realized I wasn't breathing. The way the morning light painted me still. I sat beside you, she whispers through the speaker, and I didn't cry. Not then. I just kept talking like you were listening. I told you I'd keep writing so you'd know what it felt like to live without you. I told you, if you ever found a way back, you'd find me in the pages. The recorder hums for a few seconds, then another sound emerges, my own voice, static-filled, faint, but mine. Emma, if you're hearing this, I didn't mean to go. I just wanted it quiet, just one morning, without the noise. The static deepens. I grip the edge of the table. The blue ink on my skin begins to glow faintly under the dim light lines forming words I can't yet read. Her voice returns. You never wanted silence, John. You wanted peace. They're not the same. The words strike like thunder inside me. All the years I had spent pushing away her voice, mistaking her calm for control, her care for confinement. It had always been me, building the cage. I whisper I'm sorry, but the recorder isn't done. There's one last message, faint, nearly broken. You wrote your name on the last page that morning. I kept it there. It's the only place you still exist. I turn the journal's final sheet slowly. The ink shimmers, forming the curve of my handwriting. John Miller. Underneath, another line appears, not written, but burned into the page. Now finish the story. The room starts to pulse, light expanding and contracting, with every beat that isn't my own. The clock ticks again. For the first time since I died. 7:42 a.m. The same frozen minute. I walk to the mirror one last time. My reflection looks steadier, now clearer. The faint blue light beneath my skin threads through the outline of my body, like constellations waking after a long eclipse. Behind me, Emma stands not as shadow this time, but whole. She steps closer, her hand resting against my reflection's shoulder. You can let go, she says, voice low, filled with warmth. You've already forgiven yourself. I meet her eyes in the glass. There's no fear left in them, only light. I thought you wanted me to stay, I whisper. She shakes her head gently. I wanted you to see. The walls dissolve into brightness. The ink on my skin fades, seeping away, until there's nothing left but warmth. The journal on the table bursts into soft gold, each page unraveling into dust that drifts upward, glowing like fireflies. The last thing I hear is her voice, faint and tender. Now rest. You've written enough. And then there's nothing, no house, no time, no sound, only a stillness that doesn't ache anymore. It feels like silence, but it isn't. It's peace. There's a kind of light that doesn't burn. It just reveals. That's what fills the house. Now soft, patient light. The kind that turns dust into gold and silence into something sacred. I feel no weight, no hunger, not even the pull of thought. Only stillness, pure, endless stillness. When I look down, I can see everything as it was: the table, the mug, the chair still turned slightly away from the window. My body sits there quiet, calm, a man who finally stopped trying to outrun his own mind. Emma's journal rests open beside it, the pages fluttering in a wind that isn't there. From somewhere deep in that soft brightness, I hear her voice again. Not through the recorder, not through memory, through the air itself. "You found it," she says, her tone threaded with a smile. "You always needed a story to understand the truth." I turn toward the sound. The edges of the room shimmer. She's there, not as shadow, not as memory, but light-shaped, like the woman I loved. Every detail of her feels familiar and impossible at once, the curve of her shoulders, the gentle calm in her eyes. "I didn't mean to leave you like that," I say. My words fall out steady, though my voice feels borrowed. I thought silence would fix what I couldn't say. She steps closer, her outline warm against the pale light. "You didn't leave," she whispers. "You just stopped listening." For a long time, neither of us moves. The space between us hums with something older than forgiveness, a quiet understanding that grief and love are just two words for the same ache. "I kept the journal," she says softly. "It was the only way I could still talk to you. I thought maybe if I wrote long enough, you'd hear me." "I did," I whisper. "It just took me too long." Her smile trembles the way light does on water. "Time doesn't work the same here, John. You were always going to find me. It just had to hurt first." The walls begin to fade again, replaced by a wide horizon I can't fully see. It looks like dawn breaking somewhere far away, soft streaks of gold dissolving into gray. The air tastes like rain. I glance back at the table one last time. My body is still there, unmoving. But now I notice something I didn't before: a small, folded paper under the mug. Emma kneels beside it, touching the edge of the note. The ink glows faintly as she lifts it, unfolding it carefully. She reads it aloud, her voice shaking. "Forgive me for all the times I mistook your silence for peace." She closes her eyes. "You wrote this the night before. I never saw it until now." I nod. Maybe you weren't supposed to not. Until I could mean it." The note fades into the air, turning into specks of gold that drift upward. The house feels lighter, almost transparent, like it's exhaling its final secret. Emma looks back at me. "You can rest now. The story's finished." I hesitate. What happens to us? She tilts her head. "Us, we don't end, John. We just stop pretending we were ever apart." I step closer, and for the first time when I reach out, my hand doesn't pass through her. Her fingers are warm, not the warmth of flesh, but of meaning, of memory, choosing to stay kind. The touch doesn't burn. It steadies. Around us, the room dissolves completely. The horizon widens until there's only light moving slow as breath. I can feel the pull of it, not dragging, just inviting. Beyond it, I sense everything, every morning. I wasted every apology. I never spoke every small kindness she gave me that I never learned to thank her for. All of it waiting like pages I hadn't finished reading. She squeezes my hand, ready. I nod, though I'm not sure readiness exists anymore. I look one last time at the fading house, at the chair by the window, the journal still glowing faintly, and the words across its final page. He found his silence, and it spoke back. Then the world folds into white. For the first time, the silence isn't empty. It's full. If I could tell you what comes after, I'd start by saying, it isn't light or darkness. It's understanding. The kind that doesn't speak in words, but in memory, quiet, unhurried, exact. You don't float. You don't fall. You remember. I see the house now from somewhere outside of time. It stands silent beneath the gray morning sky, no longer haunted, no longer waiting. Inside, everything is still: the chair by the window, the mug cold. At last, the faint outline of sunlight tracing the floorboards. The journal lies closed on the table. Its pages have stopped moving. The story has chosen its ending. There is no fear here, only clarity. The kind once used to hurt, but now simply exists. I understand now that every silence I built wasn't peace, it was distance. And every time Emma tried to cross it, I mistook her voice for noise. She wasn't trying to save me. She was trying to reach the part of me that still believed life could be gentle. For years, I called myself a Stoic. I thought endurance was strength. I thought silence was wisdom. But I see now, true strength isn't quiet. It's honest. It's the trembling confession whispered when no one is left to hear it. The light around me folds and bends, carrying fragments of sound, laughter, footsteps, the first rain that ever touched our porch. I follow them through what feels like wind, though it isn't. Each fragment opens like a door to memory. The night we met, the scent of lavender. The argument we never finished, the apology that came too late. They all blend into a single truth that love was never meant to be understood, only witnessed. Emma stands ahead again, her form softer now, her edges shimmering like water meeting light. She isn't waiting, she's welcoming. She smiles when she sees me, and in that smile, I find the weight of every moment we ever lived compressed into one heartbeat. I thought I lost you, I tell her. My voice sounds different, fuller, somehow, less like speech, more like thought turned into air. You never lost me, she replies. You just stopped believing you could be found. I look back one last time. The world I left behind stretches endlessly small and tender from this distance. I see the chair, the book, the window, glowing faintly with morning. Somewhere out there, another sunrise begins, one that no longer needs me to see it. Emma reaches out her hand. I take it. There is no heat, no texture, just connection. The moment our hands meet, I feel the weight of my silence lift. Every unspoken word I ever held inside becomes soundless light, scattering like dust in water. Was it worth it, I ask her. The writing, the waiting, the pain. She tilts her head, that same familiar gesture that always came before her quietest truths. It was never about worth, she says. It was about remembering, about keeping you alive long enough to understand yourself. The air trembles softly. Beneath us, the ground dissolves into a wide expanse of calm. It feels like the sea, though it moves slower, deeper, without waves. We walk across it without footprints. Every step leaves behind a faint echo of light, the residue of stories finally told. Somewhere far away, a new voice begins to whisper. It's mine, but not the same. Wiser, steadier, free. It says the words I once wrote, but never lived. Peace is not the absence of pain. It's the acceptance that nothing stays long enough to hurt forever. Emma looks at me. That's beautiful, she says. It's yours, I answer. She laughs softly, and the sound fills everything, not as echo, but as presence. We stop walking. The horizon ahead glows brighter than gold, brighter than any color memory could name. I can feel it calling, not pulling, just inviting. I look at her one last time. Do we disappear? She shakes her head. No, we become the space between. The light expands warm and quiet until it touches everything I once was. The house, the coffee, the ink, the pain, all dissolve into one endless breath. For a moment, I see the journal again. Its cover closes slowly, a final heartbeat in paper. And then I hear her voice for the last time, whispering through the quiet. He finally finished the story. I close my eyes and smile. Not because it's over, but because it finally makes sense. And in the silence that follows, I'm not gone. I'm home.